talk about the biggest woke joke in politics. It has to be Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister. Now, I was tempted, of course, to give the prize to the New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, especially when her government this week said that the boss of a largely Maori street gang was an essential worker, even though the essential work of some of his gangs seems to be selling drugs. But he's now an essential worker so that he can break the quarantine border around Auckland and talk his members into getting vaccinated and perhaps whisper any orders he might have had that he couldn't say over the phone. And yet, despite that hot competition, I'm going to give Prime Minister Ardern the second prize, because in the end, it's Justin Trudeau who beats her, not just for sustained wokeness over the duration, but for laughs as he keeps tripping over his great woke clown shoes. Trudeau this week tweeted that people across Canada were lighting candles to honour Indigenous women and girls and 2SLGBTQIA plus people who are missing or have been murdered. Now, my first thought was, what, only Indigenous women and girls and ones of every sexual preference except straights, they get a candle put out for them? No candles for straight white girls who've been murdered? But then what really threw me, of course, was that 2SLGBTQIA+, because what are we talking about here? I'd never heard of that. So I had to look it up. And apparently it means two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex and asexual plus. But I wonder how many pluses can be left that haven't actually been honoured with a letter yet. I also had to look up two-spirit. It turns out that two-spirits means Indigenous Canadians who have both female and male spirits. And if you need a hex put on anyone, apparently they're the ones to go to. Now, all this is getting so stupid. I mean, this acronym, it started with LGB, and I could handle LGBTQ and all that, but it's now growing so fast that no one can keep up anymore, including Justin Trudeau himself.
I will never apologize for standing up for an LGBTQ2 plus kids' rights.
Now, you know what I think is happening here? It's a test. If you get the letters all right in the right order, you pass. You're in the club, the woke club. And get them wrong, of course, and you're out. Wokeless. I'm sure that's it, that it's a test. Because there's actually a much easier way to describe what Trudeau means with all those letters. And you don't need a memory trick to say it. I mean, he's talking about everyone except, straight white people. Now, those are people you don't want to be lighting a candle for. And that is what makes Trudeau such a hypocrite.
A small minority, angry, frustrated group of racists don't get to define who we are as a country.
Well, in fact, a small bunch of racists is indeed defining who Canadians are as a country. Racists just like Trudeau. The new racists who praise every culture but their own, and now every sexual preference but their own as well. People like, Trudeau himself, who cannot resist dressing up as an Indian, for instance. He has got a whole wardrobe of Indian clothes for his dress-ups. I mean, this is a man who even loves dancing as an Indian. And if he's not busy being Indian, he occasionally dresses up as a black man instead. This just seems to be someone who's not comfortable in his white skin. Now, of course, Trudeau now realises that he's not allowed to escape his straight white maleness, his white guilt, and he has to apologise now for pretending to be black.
I shouldn't have done it. I should have known better. It was something that I didn't think was racist at the time, but now I recognise it was something racist to do.
And for once I have to agree with Justin Trudeau. He is a racist. I knew that. An anti-white racist is my guess. In the modern woke way, of course. He's the kind of racist that would this week even apologise for holidaying in a predominantly white holiday town instead of lighting even more candles on a Reconciliation Day to purge his white sins.
Traveling on September 30th was a mistake, and I regret it. The first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation was a time for Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people alike to reflect and connect.
Have you ever seen someone keep falling over so many of his own woke tripwires, his woke rules? Stumbling over the tripwire that 2SLGBTQQIA+, apologising for his blackface, apologising again for having fun on a day of race guilt. And normally you'd laugh at a woke preacher who sets standards that he can't even meet, being so white. Except for this, Justin Trudeau actually has the power as Prime Minister to force those crazy, racist standards on others.